We'll really appreciate that. So let me just introduce the guests with us today. David is an engineer, is a person with a passion for engineering, or an engineer, I should say. He has interest in project management and process improvement. He's an alumnus of the University of Manitoba in the mechanical engineering program. He holds the PMI project management professional certification as well. And after working in industry and completing project management certificate at the Red River College. David works as a project manager for BGIS, a leading global real estate and facility management company, delivering capital construction projects across Western Canada. And as a business process consultant, he's also involved with Montana Consulting Group, providing professional assistance to industry clients. So that's David Ugwu in a brief introduction there. My name is Abiodun Oke of the Cerial Projects Services. I'm sure a lot of you who are calling today already know what I do, what we do at Cerial Project Services. We support foreign trained professionals who are looking to get back into their profession here in Canada. We provide mentoring, we provide networking, also provide job search services as well. If you want to know more about what we do in terms of networking, which is part of actually what we are trying to do here, while we brought this guest exploring the construction industry here in Canada, you can go to our www.cerialprojects, that's that with a C, and cerialprojects.com/community. We also have it there in the chat box. You can visit there. We've had several other guests who have discussed one or two other topics and also helped us in exploring some of the industries here in Canada. So, David, nice to have you here today.
Thank you, Abiodun.
Yeah. We also have Nancy supporting us, Nancy Fiago. She's also a supply chain professional here in Canada. She's based out of Halifax, so she's providing support in the back end. And by the way, we also have about, I think, 4 other professionals in different industries who provide this, to make this happen in one way or the other. So really appreciate all their efforts here. James, I think sometimes you don't really get to understand how people, have traversed here in Canada and some of the challenges that they have undergone at this point. But I think you probably have had the same share. You have had a share of all these challenges they're probably going through currently. And I think it's, it's a kind of a thing you look back and you're like, really, some of these things are funny, but now I guess that might be the case. But some of the guys that are going right now, they probably are not funny. But I want you to just share your own experience. Let's say from your own perspective, what has your journey been in the past few years having integrated into the Canadian economy?
Okay, thank you, Abiodun, for having me today. As he had introduced, my name is David Ugwu, and I'm a project manager for BGIS. So I think, Abiodun, you and I met 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago when you had moved over here and trying to get acquainted with Canada, the job search, project management, and anything that related to the industry. I think my journey begins in 2010. I moved here from Nigeria. I was doing, I guess my family owns a construction company in Nigeria. So I've always been exposed to having like an engineering or project management background. So I did work in the company for a couple of years before I moved out here to Canada to pursue an engineering degree, which funny enough, my dad's a civil engineer, but I wanted to rebel from that. And I chose to do mechanical engineering, which, believe it or not, I find myself back in construction industry, which is largely led me to do civil stuff. I guess as you progress through your career, you get more opportunities. So now I can demand mechanical projects and things like that. But that's kind of where my journey starts. And then I went to the University of Manitoba for mechanical engineering degree, which graduated in 2014 with that. At the same time, I had started pursuing my project management diploma. So I got that from Red River College in 2016, and then I proceeded on to get the PMP certificate. I started off having the CAPM, so we can talk about processes when we get into it. But in order for me, moving from Nigeria and not having that experience, thinking that the experience you had would get you in somewhere, but then it doesn't, and then you have to take a step to try to do something else. So then I always knew that I wanted to go in project management, so I decided to take the CAPM, which is a certified associate in project management. I had no experience. I didn't have to have any experience to even get the certificate. Yeah. But it was something that I think when I went through the process of, showing your interest and that also having been largely recognized, that I think did help. So that's where we bring my journey around. After that, I worked for company that did a large project for Manitoba Hydro. So spent some time in the north doing construction inspection, quality engineering, and things like that. And then after that, I got laid off and I had to move back to Winnipeg, where I then got a job as a risk manager for an insurance company. Complete 180 from what you would think or expect, going from doing engineering to then being no job. And then I would accept this role in insurance. It was risk management, so I still got to travel around the country to do inspections, to ensure that the buildings were safe and things like that. So I had that change for almost 2 years, and then I was fortunate to get back into project management with BGIS in 2016, and I've been here, I guess, ever since. So there is some bumps in the road, if you want to call it, to achieve what you want to achieve, and we all have different stories. That's my story. I still have a lot to lots of hoops to still jump over as I progress in the career space. But I think for the intent of this this seminar today is, share the experience as immigrant, getting in there and see how we can help anyone else. And I met you through this. I've met so many other Nigerians, Africans, Middle Eastern folks that reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I help as much as I can, whenever I can. So if anyone wants to reach out after this, feel free.
Yeah, the one thing I also thought about what we are trying to do here, which is what I think I told you about already. Also, this is like, a lot of people will come to you and then they will want to ask you all sort of questions, but you can refer them to this video. Like, you already shared a lot on this video. How about you go look for that? Instead of you having to chat up every time, chat up people every time. I mean, it doesn't replace the person to person, contact or human to human interaction, but at least you have that resource, that you can go to for more details. I mean, for the immigrants or for whoever is trying to break into the industry. So I'm glad we had the opportunity today. We had another fellow the last few weeks who was actually somebody who is into architecture, and he's more into the design area, and also he also went into project management. So I like the fact that we're able to look at the project management from different perspectives. I'm sure your perspective will be more into the civil, and then we're going to be looking at facility management aspects of the operations, I suppose. Which brings me to the question of BGIS. I understand BGIS won this contract from SNC Lavalin to manage all the federal buildings across Canada. And when I look at your title, it did say some things which I know, okay, well, public works, right? I'm like, okay, what is that? Can you provide some?
Yeah, so I guess to give some context that you had said in the beginning, I mean, BGIS is a really large company, and they're like the leading facility management firm, Canada, across US, and we also have divisions in Asia Pacific. But the contract that I'm on, which is what you see all the lingo, is is for the Public Works Government Services Canada contract, which is essentially the federal contract. And when you see RP1, that's real property. So it's a group of buildings that that the government of Canada owns. And BGIS took that over from SNC in 2015 to provide all of the facility management, any upgrades, updates. Sometimes they add new buildings to the portfolio. So PWGSC is just Public Works Government Service Canada that does pretty much all of the procurement and management. So there's essentially any departments that you see on the news, be it CBSA, internal affairs, you know, anything you want to see, they're all housed somewhere, and they're housed in government buildings, which is what we manage. So we get to deal with all those peoples when we look at facility management, and those then become our tenants and our clients, ensuring that we provide them the space to serve Canada right, I guess.
Yeah, that must be a fantastic experience. You know, I mean, you're talking about the federal government buildings and facilities, right? And of course, I haven't managed a property before, you know, but I do know that maybe in terms of operations, you would have had to use a lot of skill sets, you know, talking about the human interaction itself, managing the team that are actually coordinating all these activities. In your own perspective, can you actually provide some what do you think are the critical success factors for you or for BGIS to be able to run this type of huge contract successfully?
A lot of things come into play. It's not easy to run this just as yourself. We have a lot of providers that we work with, and I think that that's probably what's most critical is that when you're running larger enterprises like this, you have to ensure that your support staff can also deliver, right? Because the one thing that you're looking for here is customer satisfaction, right? So that you can retain that, renew your contract. So it's customer satisfaction. It's focusing on what the client needs. And I think what has helped for us, because we have two different divisions, right? We have the property management services, and then on my end, that's the project delivery service. So I deal with the projects, property manages the property, but I deal with them pretty much on a daily basis because it's the issues that they raise that I have to take care of. So I guess for BGIS and for any company that's doing that is having the right support staff, support companies. BGIS itself, I mean, we have a lot of internal folks that can manage the building because we have individual techs in the building. We have people that can manage things, but a lot of works that has to get done is sourced out to other providers, right? So as long as you can get the right people in there to help you at whatever time it is, be it an emergency or a planned project or a capital project, it comes down to the people. We've talked a little bit about communication, and that's key. Because I say that to my team all the time. You know, if I don't know what I don't know. So so if you don't tell me about the issues, if you don't bring things up to me, how do I help you, right? So I think that's key in doing that.
Interesting. So I'm just trying to understand this you know, these companies sometimes they are so big that you know you're like, okay, how does this thing even work, right? Like you mentioned there that there are two different operations. There's delivery and then there's property management. You belong to the delivery. So what I'm getting from you now is that there are some times when some of the work that needs to be done in these properties will require somebody from the delivery services to be involved because it's not like it's a day in, it's not like operations per se, it's projects, you know, like you have to take that to happen, you know, over some period, and it's a short duration and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Can you go into that?
Yeah, I can go into a little detail. Like, I'm not an operations manager, so I don't know the day-to-day of the building. We have property managers, operation folks that deal with the day-to-days of the building, and they can do, you know, little projects. They can maintain what has to get maintained. They can replace things as required. But once it gets to a certain complexity or a certain dollar value, that's where we come in with the delivery aspect, because then we're looking at having consultants in, engineers, we're looking at larger scopes that we can take time to like build business cases for the government, do some investment analysis, run through our reports, then, go on to design stuff. So we go through design and then implementation at the very end. So I don't see like a lot of little things that happen unless I make an effort to find out what's going on. Like I said, I deal with them every time, and I guess the teams are just separated based on complexity and dollar values.
Oh, great. Yeah, so talking about projects, we know, of course, there are a lot of different things that are involved, right? Like you have the people, you have the tools, you have maybe materials. So I think from what you said earlier, you do outsource quite a bit of, what you are doing there, where you're practically managing suppliers as well. Is that the case?
Yeah, I'm managing. Yeah, exactly. Managing all the different stakeholders, whoever it is that's involved there. So I do have suppliers. So essentially, we are like the larger, I guess, in the terms you want to call it, I guess, contractor. And then we get our subcontractors are the people that I mentioned.
Oh, I get it.
Be it the consulting firms.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah, and also the other subcontractors are going to perform the work, right? So.
Okay, great. So, of course, there'll be some tools, any specific tools that you use in this type of things, like the facility management. Of course, we talk about the human, the resources. We talk about the suppliers. How about the tools? Are there any specific tools that you're actually using that to be able to accomplish your task or ensure you accomplish effective delivery?
Yeah, I think I'm sure everyone that's worked in different places. Like it all varies depending on how you want to have your reporting structure work out. So asset management for the folks we essentially built an internal system that helps us manage that. So I can go on about our internal system, but that doesn't really help anyone because they're going to switch up to a different company and it changes. But for me as a project manager anyways, I mean, there's general tools that you still have to use. And I think the largest one and the most important one would be MS Projects is what we use to forecast our schedule. We also have our spend also imputed into Microsoft Project that we can run, whatever macros we need to provide reports for the client in terms of forecasting our spends for that year. But in terms of all the management pieces, it's more of a in-house built system. So, real property that the company built specifically for this contract. So it's a little hard for me to I guess explain all the different tools that can be used. We can talk about different communication platforms that I know people use, from Slack to whatever you want to use, right? But for managing the facility, it ends up being just making sure that you have the right standard operating procedures in place, and that would vary by company from company to company. So we have a lot of policies that everyone in the company is supposed to follow, health and safety or operational wise or project delivery wise. So.
Great. Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes to construction industry, I think sometimes we'll think that, maybe they use a different set of tools. That's really what brought these questions. Maybe there are some specific tools that are used mostly in the construction industry. So I give you an example. An ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning tool, which is more or less like a tool that we are familiar with in supply chain, for example. We do use it a lot, and the one that is really common for us is SAP or Oracle or Microsoft Dynamics. So you will think, okay, maybe in construction there is a specific one, and that's actually the case. In a lot of industry, they have some type of specific type of ERP that they use in these industries that is different from what we know. So I guess that's also what brought up some of these questions. So are there anything specifically for, okay, so facility management, this is the tool that you would find.
I couldn't answer that question on facility management to say that that's the exact tool.
Well, Microsoft project for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're talking about different tools like Oracle, we use that for invoicing and things like that. There's different departments that handle different things. So I mean, I can talk about things that I'm not very knowledgeable about
Sure.
in the realms, but I wouldn't want to go that way. I mean, I focus on the project management piece, which I think it's more focused on communication, and you have your MS project, which is pretty much your Bible. Yeah, in that regard. But there's so many other tools, in construction industry. And like I said, it will vary depending on the company that you work for.
Right. Okay then. Yeah, well, I guess leaving the going a little bit up, like from a bigger picture perspective now to look at the industry. Given what has happened in the past few months concerning COVID-19, the pandemic, and all of that. You talked earlier about communication with the team, and now you're working from home, I suppose, just like every other person is working from home. And I'm wondering how effective is this, this new way of working? What's your perspective as to the effectiveness of, working from home and working remotely overall, for you in the construction industry? I guess you'd have to go to the site. How does that work, to go see what is going on there?
Yeah,
is it still video or Zoom or what do you do?
I mean, yeah. Luckily, I guess, thankfully, we have all these video communication tools now. With COVID, there was a huge change. You can't readily access site now. You got to do all your daily checks and your screening to make sure that you're clear to go to site. When you get to site now, you have to essentially give them an advance notice that you'll be showing up. In terms of us working from home, it hasn't affected our delivery in that sense, except with the site visits. I have some projects that are all the way in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Northwest Territories, even in Yellowknife. Unfortunately, I can't travel to Yellowknife now unless I go through all the government procedures. So for things like that, we're having to do video calls and have people walk me through the building and show me the project. And that's how I can get the inspection done. So it's really affected the industry in terms of your ability to be present, because if you don't have to be on site, then you can't leisurely show up to site and stand around people and have conversations, which is where you get the real gist of what's going on. But now it's a lot of virtual things. I still travel. I mean, a couple of weeks back, I still had to go to Saskatchewan to take a look at projects, but now it's very selective on what requires you to make that trip or that risk, as opposed to if you can, deliver the project on little scopes based on photos and videos and site reports, and just reducing the amount of people that actually show up to the buildings. But I think that it's really affected us in a positive way when I look at the project.
Actually, I'll be interested in the positive aspects of it as well. I mean, because most of us have experienced COVID-19, both on the positive and the negative side. What are the positive side that you actually see?
Positive side, I think, in construction is that now, like, the construction industry is forcing people to be much cleaner. Like in the past, you show up to a construction site and everyone is just, you have 12 people in a construction trailer. You just walk right off site into your trailer. You don't clean up properly. There wasn't always like a lot of, I know, like, 6 years ago or so, you would have your little pit, porta potty on the outside. There was barely any water. There wasn't hand sanitizers for you to get yourself clean. But now I show up to site and that's a requirement now that you have to have that. So you see that lots of the sites are cleaner. People are distancing themselves, protecting themselves. So I think that that's positive for the industry, that we wouldn't have so many people working in a environment that's not conducive for them. And if you read through articles, you see that that's been an issue. You don't think about it in Canada that's what people are going through, but when you look at larger projects and on that scale, when you're managing 200 people on site, that does play a big role. So I think that's positive, that companies now are focusing more not just on safety of like getting injured, but safety also on people's health and things like that. But I think that's for me personally, things that I've seen, that would be the largest positive for the industry.
Great. So, well, a lot has happened in terms of COVID-19. I mean, for our profession, a lot has happened in the sense that some of the strategies that we've used for 100 years, that has been effective, COVID-19 came, and then, I saw somebody making an analogy the other day about how COVID-19 impacted supply chain. It's like, there was a quotation about this, what's his name now? Mike Tyson quotation about, everybody's got a plan until they got a point in the mouth. So it's like that's what happened to supply chain. Basically, supply chain had a point in the mouth, from COVID-19. So I don't know what is the one memorable impact that you think that COVID-19 had on the construction industry. If you can share that with us. There are several things. For us in supply chain, pretty much it disrupted everything that we know to be supply chain strategies, that we have to figure out a new way of doing things. But for construction industry, what is that memorable thing that, where the major impact actually happened in construction industry as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
Yeah, I think when it first started, we were hit a lot, just like with the supply chain, because I mean, you guys touch pretty much everything that we do. So getting material from overseas or wherever it may, we had a huge, I guess, halt. There was a lot of delays in getting material in because I had a project that my materials got stuck in Vancouver because the government hadn't decided if they should test it for COVID-19 or not. And it's like, why you inspecting cargo per se? That's pieces of equipment that's been cleaned and whatever in wherever it was that it came from, right? And then now we're having it stuck at the port for weeks on end while everyone tries to like figure out what's going on, and also like a lot of scramble in like before the borders got closed. So it was more a lot of like logistics that was involved for us in the construction industry. Anyways, they applied to me, and as I said before, sites had to get shut down because everyone was very confused as to what's going on. I had a project that was essentially put on hold. I had to go get a bunch of guys to show up after hours, and then they almost wanted to get people to start wearing Tyvek suits to go to site. And then that's the issue now, because how do I, as a plumber, wear a Tyvek suit and a mask and my glove? I can't really do the work. And then you say I can stand 2 feet away from my 6 foot away from my coworker who's helping me lift that valve up. There was a lot of things that we had to think about. It's like, how do you have two guys not 6 feet within themselves but performing the same task? So there was a lot of logistics in that sense, and that's kind of how it hit us. Is like, what is the best way for these tasks that are not self-isolated to be able to be completed, and how do you fit the right amount of people in that space? So lots of policies got changed. That's why I said at the beginning that the thing that we're going to get out of this for the construction industry is the cleanliness and the people being able now to think about their health when they go into a construction space. So for me, I think it's the logistics hit us hard, and also the cleanliness of the facility, because everything had to stop. But on a positive note, for us in BGIS, people that do asset management, we were able to get everybody out of the building. So I could do more shutdowns. I could do more, floor renovations. So that's a positive also, because there's no one in the buildings. So it was a great time for construction to
that's true.
happen. So for us, even though we had a delay in getting equipment in, there was no one in the building for us to speed through the process. So it was a whole balance of negatives and positives, if you want to put it that way. But I look at it more as a positive in the end. I know people are going to start coming back to work, and that's another thing. Slowly, different people say, well, I'm going to start coming back to work in July. And like, why are you coming back in July? I haven't finished my project. Because I wasn't accounting for you. So you're almost hoping that no one shows back into the office until October, November, because you're having such a great time working in an empty building. So I think that's where it affects us for facility management. If it was a brand new build, I wouldn't really have those concerns or those risks. So I think project management really varies in whatever industry you are. And even for construction, it's, what kind of construction are you doing? Are you doing brand new builds? Are you working in buildings? Are you doing renovations? There's a lot of different risk that is affected in the industry. So
interesting. I mean, well, we've come out of this year, and then there will have been a lot of things that has changed from the way we used to do things. Hopefully, I'm actually looking forward to even a better, to 2021 from all that we've learned so far, and even, some of the innovative ways, that we maybe innovations that came about, from all of this COVID-19 pandemic. Are there any things that are, you could call innovation that you guys kind of came up with, just to make things still happen during this pandemic?
I think I think the largest one in terms of innovation. I don't know if people from Zoom or Teams or Microsoft knew this was going to happen, but the integration of the integration of remote workspace and being able to conduct meetings from wherever you are. I think that's probably the biggest thing that they change. Well, one of the biggest things, I guess, that they change for us. For our industry, our company, we always look to keep innovating. So it's how do you reduce the amount of time that you're spending with people that's not required, because time is money, right? So I think us having gotten Teams, Zoom, that's like a large thing for us. But in terms of innovation for how we did carry work moving forward, it's just a lot of procedures that came in around health and safety. But all of this is pretty much tied around how Canada addressed their response. It's really hard to to innovate, as they say in construction, because it's been going on for so long that it's hard to change it, I guess.
No, that sounds good. So, well, I want to believe that we have some questions already from the guys who are still in here. The question, I think there's a tool for question and answer. If you have questions, just put in there, and we'll have some time to look at those questions later. Because I know as we're speaking, a lot of people probably have questions just like I had too. So you can put your question there in the question and answer box, and then we'll get to it. But before we go on to any question that is available right now, I like to talk more about the project management methodologies, because like that's like one of those key things or tools, or is it best practices, so to speak, that you have to learn in order to practice effectively as a project manager. And I'm wondering, because this is a big global best practices, so to speak, in terms of the context, it applies across the industries. And I wonder if there are some of these methodologies or tools from your own experience that you have been able to apply so far that's kind of effective or that were helpful, that you think people who are trying to get into the construction industry needs to prioritize in terms of their learning, on knowledge for project management?
Yeah, I think if you're trying to get into project management in the construction industry, there's a there's a number of ways that you can get into it. In terms of tools that are being used, there's different certifications that are out there. Right? You can either go for Prince 2, or you follow the PMI route and come get the CAPM like I talked about originally, or the PMP. For people that are in North America, I focus more on the PMI, just because that's what's more recognized than the Prince 2 in Canada, unless you're going down the Agile route. And then now you're looking at getting your Scrum Master certificate done if you're going into IT and things like that. But if we come back to project management, I think, as I said before, the biggest thing for us really is communication. When you look at the PMI and the PMBOK and the things that it does look at, there's like 5 different knowledge areas that you're looking to focus on, which is initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and your closeout. But within that, there's integral things that you have to keep in mind that affect your project. Which most important thing for me is communication. I can't stress how much that's required for a project manager. If you can communicate with people and you can communicate your issues, your projects, and your risk, and that helps you greatly. You also look at the integration of the entire project process, which you can't, there's also the Pareto's law that, 80% of your issues come from 20% of your of of what of what you should focus on. So planning is a big thing. Focusing on scope management and understanding that that doesn't creep into what you're doing. But for anyone that's moving in, like I said before, in terms of certifications, I would shoot for the PMP. If you go into project management itself, I mean, it does come with a requirement for experience, which is a little difficult to get because you're like, how do I get into project management with 4 years of experience to get the PMP, but then have no experience? So you can look at the CAPM for PMI, and that would at least that requires no experience, so at least that can show your interest. And when you get into the industry, even though you want to become a PM, I always tell people to look at more of a 5-year plan. So if you're looking in here and saying, well, I want to become a project manager, but I haven't experienced in that, why don't you look at, getting into the industry by being like a project administrator? You can help out and work with the coordinators to kind of understand how the Canadian industry works. And that way you get exposed to site, you get exposed to building laws, you get exposed to contracts, you get exposed to scheduling, you get exposed to, cost management and things like that. You may not see everything, but it boils down to your interest, right? And then from that, you can move on to project coordinator, which then assists the project manager and helps out in doing a lot of the, actual site duties, going into site, doing verifications, or being a field coordinator. And then you can grow that way before you become a project manager. Anyone I see without experience, I don't say go do a PMP tomorrow, or look for a project management role. Like there's different steps that you can use to get into the industry. As opposed to focusing on just that. I think of the larger, longer term, larger scale of what you're trying to accomplish. And when we look through different companies, you could see a project management role that requires 1 year experience. You can also see a project management role that requires 10 years experience. You can see a project coordinator role that requires 5 years experience. It's doing more than a project manager would have done in a different company. So I tell people not to get too caught up in the role description in the title, but focus on what the description is of the role. Because when you go into project management to get your PMI, it's not really focused on the fact that you were a project manager. It's focused on the fact that you managed, pieces of the puzzle, and you look at all your different areas. How much work did you do on scheduling? You could have been a scheduler, but that would still be that you manage a schedule, which is a piece of the project. You could be a cost estimator. You also manage pieces of the project that you have to think of, what are you trying to accomplish here and how do you get there? So there's different avenues you can get in through. If you're great at cost planning, by all means, approach it that way and look at how you become a project manager over time. I'm not sure if you're frozen or that answered your question. Do we still have connection? Can someone say in the chat if they can hear us? Okay, I cannot hear Abiodun, so I guess we'll wait for him to get back on.
You guys, but so you were somebody actually had a question, which you asked the question. No. Going.
Sounds like you have some connection issues, Abiodun.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now. You're good.
Okay. So there is a question there for us from one of the listeners. How do you switch from project management in one field, non-profit, to another field? So basically, this person is talking about switching from one field to another in project management. Can you speak to that?
I mean, I can speak to that in a way. As I had said before, like the roles vary, and now in our industry, I guess industrial product management in general, I tell people like anyone. I don't want to say anyone can be a project manager, but anyone can call themselves a project manager. Being that, what is a project? The project is is you trying to deliver or achieve a certain goal. So even me getting up and going to my bedroom is a project. So when we look at people that are not for profit, what are you managing, right? I think that's more like program management, and you're looking at how do I take how do I achieve a certain goal with the resources that I'm provided. When you want to switch from say construction to IT or IT to government policy, you first have to see, like, I mean, do I understand the industry, and what can I bring to that industry? IT has a completely different requirement from if you're going into construction, because IT folks look at, they focus more on agile. You're looking at, Scrum, sprints, iterations like that. So then you have to look at what are the requirements for IT. Do I start off doing, the ITIL? Um, you know, there's always different certifications that you have to do. So I think the best way for you to switch is, first of all, determine if you're willing to succumb to that industry's process, and then figure out what all the requirements in terms of certifications are for those. If you come into construction, it's based largely on experience, and we follow like a waterfall approach most of the time, being that we have to get this building done. So we know how we're going to get there from A to B. You can't, um, the setting requirements that we have. But when you go into IT, it's the projects vary largely from Microsoft's integrations to just system updates, but it's a different requirements. I would say, I guess in a nutshell, that if you want to switch from one field to the other, you got to first figure out if that's the industry for you, and then what are the certifications and requirements for those industries. I find it hard, and I find it interesting when project managers just say, "Well, I'm a PM, so I can do any project." I don't think that's right, unless you have that background in that industry. You can go in for sure and be, manage people and say, well, I can get from point A to point B, but do you understand what's going on? Or are you going to be a project manager, paper pusher that's just, solely dependent on your SMEs, right? And that's fine. Maybe you're better off as a business analyst. So there's a lot of things,
Yeah.
you know, that comes in. But I just say, like, project management, you're essentially trying to get a goal. You're making everybody happy. You're bringing, all aspects of the deliverable together to achieve that. So you can switch from role to role, but you have to, first of all, to be effective as a project manager, you have to understand what industry it is that you're going into. Don't know if that answers Hafiz's
Okay,
question.
that's an interesting take there of the question. Well, I think you already answered it in a way, with the question I asked earlier, where you did say that communication really is the key thing, the priority of any project manager. So in a way, and the truth really is that if you are not somebody who is good at communication, I don't see how you will be a project manager really, or a good project manager at that. So for the person who asked that question, I think David, you've really spoken to that, because really it's not really about the industry a lot of the times, but it is always good to have that knowledge, that to understand the nuances of this different subject matters, to be able to then perform in the role of a project manager. And you also spoke something earlier where you said that you could actually shadow, that role. Like, okay, maybe you could do something like a project administrator, you could do a project coordinator. While you are doing all of these things, you are kind of studying and understanding what it takes to actually become an effective project manager. So I think that's a very, very good way to go about this. If it's something that the listener there is thinking about, you going as somebody who can then understudy a project manager, and then there you become more effective. So yeah, we're talking about facility management. I think one of those facilities for you is, basically your site, is the facility, the place where you go to carry out these activities. Is still also the facility where you carry out your job. So what are those issues that are specifically related to the type of project sites where you work, talking about the federal buildings that you're working on now? What are some of the pertinent issues that anyone, say, for example, wants to be a project coordinator or administrator or whatever? What are the key things that they need to watch out for in order to be more effective?
Yeah, I think when you talk about facility management, I mean, that just literally means that you're managing, places where people occupy. And I think that that's going to be your biggest risk is I talk about communication all the time, but really your biggest risk is in the end, how do you complete your work in a live building without significantly affecting the people that's in the building? There's many times that if you've worked in any building, you get a message from the property management team saying, elevator is going to be down tomorrow, or the AC is going to be out for X amount of time. That's all the work that we're doing in the background to make sure that no one's really affected. So then in our industries, if I'm doing any replacements on your chillers, your boilers, I have to wait until the right season comes apart, because I'm not going to take your chiller out in the summertime. That's going to be very poor planning on my part, and you wouldn't want to sit in the building looking for AC right now. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is being able to schedule your work, that the folks occupying the building get a seamless transition. And you showing up to work, you don't want to have no water. So we have to do that work after hours. We have to coordinate that. We have to ensure that we give enough time. And I'm not going to cram in, 12 hours worth of work overnight, because then you have to think of people's fatigue, staff that's having to work after hours. And what if something happens, and then you show up in the morning at 8 o'clock going, I can't wash my hands. So I think that's the largest thing that we deal with in facility management. And that's why I think communication is key, is that if you're able to understand, I guess, not only from the tenants that's in the building, but as I say, we work here like lots of subcontractors, being able to coordinate those people and understand the scope that they're going to deliver, and see if it actually makes sense. I don't like when people overpromise and don't deliver, right? I'd rather you told me the truth, and then let's work your way to make a collaborative approach in terms of achieving this. It's fine if you sleep in your schedule. It's fine if there may be some cost overruns, as long as I'm aware of it and it's not on the critical path, and we can handle that risk. We always have to account for that. We talked about COVID earlier. That's how COVID also comes into play. Buildings are empty, we're happy. Now people are back. I can't do that anymore. So I think that, and another thing that in project management, a big thing is your funding. When you get into project management, there's three things that you pretty much focus on. Scope, schedule, and budget. So what is my scope? Can I do it within that time frame that's being given to me? And do I have the money to do it? I have projects sometimes we're dealing with the feds, and it would vary between the federal government, being that it's public money, to a private equity firm or a private entity. Sorry, that's just spending their money. So then we have to look about, you have to worry about when's funding going to be available. Have I put it in my plan that I have enough money to be able to complete this project? Do I have room for changes? And I think that's a huge thing for us, and we always try to use taxpayers' money to the best way. so that's also a larger, I guess more of a concern for us, is that I can't be extravagant. So I'm trying to be able to give the people what they want, while still being reasonable in terms of the expectations of scope and schedule.
Right.
Facility management, really, that is the main issue, is finding out how you can keep the tenant happy, that no one knows that you're in the building.
Yeah. That actually, when you said that reminds me of because I worked at Manitoba Housing at some point. I know this is one of the major issues going to these buildings and, fixing stuff and not without causing any distraction, or even some of the Manitoba government buildings, having to go do some work there, planning it properly to make sure that, it's all of these factors that you basically mentioned already. So it's really, it's kind of, what you call fun, when you actually have to factor all these things into your plan, into your scheduling. Yeah, definitely. I really get that.
Yeah, there's not one project that's the same. So I think that's what makes project management fun for me, is that I get to deal with different characters and different kinds of projects. I'm never bored. You see, just show up and say, "Well, I'm doing the exact same thing." So if anyone enjoys that challenge, then maybe it is for them.
Interesting. So, you did talk about, outsourcing quite a lot of the things that you do, and so because of that, we thought, okay, guess what? You would have to be dealing with suppliers, with vendors. I assume that's part of what you deal with, right?
Yep.
So we were kind of, interested in how you deal with contract management in the construction industry from your own perspective. How does this work? What are those specific type of tools, that you use in contract management, when in your own day-to-day activity on a project? What do you consider to be the most effective practice that work for you on BGIS projects, managing suppliers?
Well, I think you've asked a couple of questions there, and I think we can start off with the contracts. I mean, in Canada, we have. I mean, if you go into construction, there's different contracts that can come into play. But for the scopes that we handle, being that you deal with larger things, we follow the CCDC, which is the Canadian Construction Documents Committee contracts, and this will vary between CCDC 2 to CCDC 5. If you have a contract, a construction manager in, there's different contracts that come into play. Also, when I get my consultants on, we have the ACEC, which is for the Engineering Association, and then it has certain guidelines that are standard across of Canada that we follow. So in terms of contract management, we don't. I mean, we have supplementary conditions that we add onto that, and when you talk about insurances too, because there's building risk. For bonding, performance and material bonds, so that people don't run away from the job, and if they do, you have a way of getting some money back, or being able to go after them unless they file for bankruptcy. Then we have to deal with that. But that will be the standard contracts that we use. I mean, anyone can go and read on those different contracts, but in Canada, those will be what we focus on, and then depending on how you're going to approach the project, then you follow that, or you go simply with a purchase order, and that's when we come into your supply chain folks, right? So for supply chain effect on us, it's large for me, and and for any project manager really. So like I said, I do more mechanical projects. You have equipment that's showing up from around the country. I don't know where it's coming from. I could be in Winnipeg right now, but all the material is coming from Toronto, or everything's here in Winnipeg, or it's coming from a factory in the US that we have to deal with, and we have to talk to these people. And so supply chain, like I said earlier, supply chain is involved in everything, and it's very significant to us because I can't deliver. I have no materials without you guys. So that's huge for us. And once again, it's those relationships that you build. And I found that in Winnipeg, and probably any other a city that you go to, is the relationships that you build. I have supply chain folks or contractors that I can call now and go, hey, I need XYZ, and they can get it to me in record time. So you can build that relationship, and you understand where people are coming from. I mean, there's different ways. In the end, they say money speaks, right? So there could be people that come up to you and say, well, you have it's a 2-month a delay, but then there's ways to expedite it. There's way to have the conversations you have to know, and the supply chain folks also have to tell them what the possibilities are. COVID, like we talked about before, really affected us in the sense that you couldn't even pay for that to be expedited because everyone's already backlogged, so your money wasn't really working for you. So those are the things that we've had to deal with. But supply chain, just replying to the question that was on there, professionals wouldn't necessarily be in the companies per se, unless you're like a purchaser and things like that. But you're involved in like purchase of things from all over the country, or all over the world, really.
Yeah, that's does this do we say it feels good to know, but I know that the people who you had to deal with who are in supply chain, expediting these materials, they are not having fun, right? Because they are also, putting pressure on some other folks, to get these things, and generally it's just pressure on everybody in the end. So,
Yeah.
but it's interesting to see how supply chain fits into this whole scenario. So you already talked about the different contract models, which is interesting because I know that that might play into this whole thing because you're working on government projects. So using of these standard models probably might be a thing. But in terms of the relationship management, there is a contract management aspects of it. Do you have any specific tools that you use in the management, or is it manual at this point? I wouldn't believe it's manually managed at this point.
Uh, the contracts are are manual. I don't think there's any tool that's in place. I know there's a lot of conversations on, putting the sales onto a CCDC contract and being able to actually move things around. We're still moving paper copies of contracts around. I don't think that's changed. And like you said, like the tool that we have in play is straight from the Canadian Construction Association. So we follow the CCDCs, and that's kind of what we deal with. I mean, there's other things when you start to break the layers in. You have your holdback and liens that takes effect at 40 days after substantial completion, and we can go into all of this detail, but without giving a Canadian construction law course tonight, I'm not sure we can get through all of that. But yeah, in terms of the actual tools that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
tools that are in place, that's we stick by the construction documents, and we follow that through to the end. Everyone, reasonably understands what's all involved in that, as long as you can understand your terms and conditions of getting into that contract, and then you're fine. Maybe you could elaborate, help me a little bit more in the exact tools you're looking for. Maybe you're skipping my mind.
Yeah, well, when it comes to tools, I do know that for a company of that size, managing that size of a contract, um, what usually happens for us in supply chain management is when you have such contracts and you have a relationship with a supplier, what happens is that there will be some obligations, that are established. Of course, they are in the contract, right? But then there has to be some tracking of those deliverables, of those obligations, such that there are no value lost, in the management of that supply or in the management of the delivery. So there are some specific tools that have been created to actually manage contracts of this nature. Like a lot of people do say here in Canada, I heard that for it in Canada, they would say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But you know what, I kind of had a laugh there when COVID-19 happened, and then I'm like, okay, well, guess what? He's broken now.
Yep.
Then we have to fix it. But then at that point, it was already too late, right?
Yep.
So, and that's really quite an experience for us in supply chain to really see that really all the things that we thought, the worst that people never thought would happen, actually just happened in a very short time, and nobody was able to do anything about it, and we're just kind of struggling. So, but yeah, it's interesting to know that things could still be done at that level, without necessarily using a tool that actually scales contract management, in that kind of a sense. So, I think I could ask you about, your role as a project manager at BGIS. What is that one thing that you kind of find to be fun for you, working on BGIS projects?
And I think the fun for me is the variety of projects. Like I know prior to coming to BGIS, and even still some days you think about the larger projects that are going on, and it's like, well, I want to work on, a high rise, I want to work on a large scale project. But then you think about it, and then it ends up being, say if I was doing a skyscraper project, once I've done my foundation, once I've got the first, second floor, everything is copy and paste. So that, some people can get bored of that. But I think in BGIS so far, I haven't hit that because sometimes I have civil works, like I said, we do road constructions. I'm currently setting up some wastewater plants. I have mechanical upgrades. I have different things that I have to deal with. So I think the variety of the projects that I get to be that I get to deal with is probably what makes this most interesting for me. And also just being in the public sector, there's, it's people talk about red tape and all of that, and that's a lot of what you have to deal with. Money, like, is the government going to fund XYZ? COVID happened, there we go. Well, there's all our budget gone, and then you have to adapt to that. So it's never boring working on this BGS contract that I can speak of. And I think that variety, and most importantly for me, I think, is the people. Like, if you're in a company that the people works great for you, and everyone is open to conversations, willing to help, willing to learn, then it's always great to be there. I tell people, when you look at project managers or you look at any interview, like I've interviewed and hired some project managers, and the first question is always, I have to tell them what a culture is. And for me, it's more important that you can fit into the culture, because I don't doubt that you can run that you can run a project, but can you fit into the culture of what's expected in this organization when we follow our own project management processes. And I think that's usually where you find a big switch. You have people, I've had people that have hired on that have 10, 50 years of experience, but then they can't really assimilate to the culture, or it's very different from where you've come from. So that does play a big role, I think, for anyone that's looking for a project manager, or anybody in general. It's really how you fit more into the culture, as opposed to just being able to complete that task.
Great. Yeah, I mean, that's very, very important. And talking about, interviews and fitting in, I think I'll go to those questions right now, because you really spent a lot of time talking about, project management and all of that. And I know the listeners here are kind of itching to get some of your own insights in regarding job search. So I think we can start with, what are those specific strategies that you think, I'm talking about construction industry right now. I know you already gave us one. Okay, why don't you come in as at a low level as a project administrator or as coordinator or whatnot? Yeah. But now, what do you think are those approaches that, especially foreign trained professionals, can apply in order to be able to break into the industry successfully?
Yeah, I think that's I'm asked that question, but I think Abiodun is the best person to answer that question, because once you come in, and for any foreign trade individual, you being able to network is key. And I always tell people, don't be shy to reach out to people to help you out with the networking. For any foreign trained individual that comes in, I know a lot of foreign trained individuals that have come in and had no issues. I've also know a lot of people that have come in and had issues, and that's why I speak about starting not at the bottom, but finding more of an entry level for it to get there. If you have a lot more experience, say 10 years or more, and you're moving over here, then by all means speak with a career counselor, or a headhunting agency. Because that's probably going to help you better to target your audiences than for you to sit at home and shitting out hundreds of emails to get to know people. So if Cerial Projects is in there, Talent Core is in there, we have different headhunters that you could use, and that would be my suggestion, as well as having that outreach. Going to events. I mean, we can't really do that right now, but but in the past you could do that, and when that does change, is just continuing to have that conversation. And any certifications that you can get also that are recognized in Canada, that's also
I know.
happening to start with. Go on.
Did you say certification?
Yes, yeah. I had talked about having certifications too, because if you come into a new country,
Oh,
when we also look at whatever you do, even if you move over for school, they have to evaluate your your courses against that university to see if it actually works, right? So that's the same thing with jobs. So if you've been working, say, in Nigeria or wherever it is, and you move over here, what company were you working at? How can you leverage that experience? Is it a recognized company? Can you reach out to any outlets that they have out here in Canada or in the US? Something like JLL is in Nigeria. There's also JLL in Canada. If you're moving over from there, you should look for contacts like that could help you uh,
mhm.
get in here, because it's the same process. If you don't have that, then you're talking to your career experts, and you're also looking for different skills that you can gain. Certifications is one of them. Like I said, in construction industry, it's a lot more about the experience than the certifications. So you're looking at that. You're looking at what you can do. I speak more for project management, and then, like I said before, you go through different skill sets, or start lower and achieve that, and then write the exams as quickly as you can, because the experience is worldwide. These certification agencies are not necessarily looking at Canadian experience. So if you can get those things to show your interest, and get those things to grow your network, then you know it's one of the avenues. I mean, nothing's perfect, so I can't say I
Mm,
have the answer,
yeah.
but
Yeah. I think you mentioned a couple of things. You talked about the networking part of it. You talk about the certification aspects of it. And then you also mentioned something specifically that if you had some experience from your own country, and then the same company operates here, you should get in contact with those companies, and then see if there's a way they can help you to break into the industry here in Canada. So, which are really very, very, yeah, I really kind of agree with those things. Uh, Networking is a major one because a lot of people don't really understand what networking means. I think it's confusing a lot of the times when they say network, and it's really on a high level code right there that people kind of miss it when you say, oh, networking. But I've been trying my effort to really see how I can demystify what networking means to people. Like what we're doing right now is networking. A lot of we need to kind of have this sense for what it means. It's about building trust and building relationships. That's really what it is.
yeah,
But a lot of the times, it's coded as networking. It's about building trust and relationships with contact within the industry. And one of these avenues here is what we are having here with David, helping us to understand how this industry works, and from his own perspective, from his own experience. So I think he really did provide us with a lot of insights, especially as to how the facility management works on the projects that you are working on right now. But I think one final question I have here is, um, so what are those specific things that you will think that you did differently actually to be able to break into the industry, given all of these other things that you've said already? What are those things that you did specifically differently to get yourself into the industry?
I I think I've talked about it in different pieces throughout this past hour, right? So I think that kind of what I realized, that I think that really helped me out, is that like I said, I had a 5-year plan, and I knew where I wanted to go, where I wanted to be, and being able to set those expectations, and not I never expected that it would happen overnight, right? But being able to, whenever you have that free time, to do multiple things at the same time. As I was getting the engineering degree, I was also doing the project management certificate, because I knew that they would find a way to collide eventually. I didn't get either or right away. I mean, I did get the engineering right away, but I didn't get project management right away. So it's while you're in whatever role you are in, being that I was quality engineer, I was vying within the company to get some project management roles because I knew that's where I wanted to go. I never got the title of project manager, but I was able to see the larger picture of where I was and understand, just like I had said, that I could learn from different people, I could gain that knowledge, and I could still pursue, I guess, the career goals that I wanted. There's no experience that I've had that I would say was irrelevant. Even me coming back and going to risk management, that showed me a lot more. I got to network with a lot more people, different businesses, and you got to learn kind of, you know, what makes people work. And I think that ultimately you have to understand people, understand relationships, understand communication, network as much as possible. I still network right now because who knows what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
But I think really for me, I think that's kind of what happened is, you know, you set a goal and do not be scared to do multiple things at the same time. I mean, I'm a younger guy, so maybe I can say that because I still have the energy and the time. You know, when you come into play with people coming in and you have kids and all of that, you know, your situation is very different. And I can't expect that you're killing yourself, you know, 24 hours a day to achieve, you know, it's so uncertain. But I would say that, you know, what worked for me, and like I said earlier, I did the CAPM. You know, find things that do not require a lot of experience and 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 get those so that you show your interest to people that are looking at you, as opposed to waiting for the, you know, for the bigger picture. I had the CAPM for 3 years before I got the PMP, but within that period, I was able to go from company to company and end up being a project manager with the CAPM. So I try not to look down on things, and I say, you know, anything that can move you even an inch ahead of your goal, as long as you have a set plan, um, then you do that, and that's what I think has helped me personally. And even when I get there, it's like, what's next? You know, even within project management, you know, can you become a portfolio manager? Can you run multiple projects? You know, there's so many different things that can happen. And now that we are in this world of being able to do everything remotely, and also, you know, everybody has different experiences, so we're able to intertwine and, you know, jump from jobs to jobs. If that's your path, that's great, but I think that as long as you have a set plan and you're able to keep doing your research on what's, you know, required in that industry, and you're talking to career folks, you should be good.
Thanks so much, David. So that's been quite a lot of information you shared with us today. Really appreciate the time that you've you know, provided to make yourself available. So we really appreciate the time that you've spent to provide these insights and information. So we have a lot of folks who also help to make this possible. Nancy, James, Dio worked in the back end to help us to make this possible. We will send any information that comes after this event. We can send them to you just in case we still have some more questions. But at this point, I don't think there's any question at this point. Thanks so much for the time. You mentioned something there, which you talked about, you know, relationships, you know, keeping relationships, because you never know what comes up down the road. And this is one of the things that I would like to part with. The word that I would like to put out there, you know, as we leave this session, that you need to continue building relationships. Already, I would expect everybody that came online this evening to connect with David. I mean, just reach out to him, let him know, okay, you were on the session and then you would like to connect with him, you know, to start building that relationship, you know, in a way. So that's all I would leave with you, these guys today. Guys, thanks for coming. David, we appreciate all the time and the effort you put into this. Looking forward to more these sessions with you. Okay then, thanks. So now, bye everybody. Night.